You might think that creating a comic is really difficult, but really AI has made creating an engaging comic easy and accessible. Simply look at the results that I've been able to achieve within a couple of hours. Everything from a great cover to beautiful imagery with nice narration and speech bubbles that fit perfectly. Before we get started with putting in the action, it's now first of all time for me to show you what tools we're going to be using in order to create our comic. So first of all, we'll be creating our stories, our images, and the alignment of those images along with the text and speech bubbles using the free version of ChatGPT. Continuing on, we'll be using Canva. Here we're going to align the images and we might use one or two features which are paid for. However, we'll show you alternatives that you can use where you will still be using the free version of Canva. So there you won't actually be having to pay for it. It's just a nice to have, but not necessary. Next up is Picsart, which we're going to be using for putting a filter on top of our images in order to make them seem to be having the same art style. And finally, we'll be using Discord, which is free, and inside of Discord creating a server, which will then allow us to invite the Midjourney and InsightFace Swap bots. Now the one thing we are forced to pay for is the Midjourney bot, which is gonna cost $30 per month. And then finally in the end we're gonna be assembling the comic inside of Canva, as well as again working with Picsart. And that's it. Let's go. You first of all have to get a main idea of what this comic should be about. For example, a hero story or somebody in everyday life going through a very unique circumstance. Who are the characters? What are their main attributes? What do they look like? What can they develop towards? Where did they start and where are they going? What challenge are they overcoming? Or what the moral of the story should be. Going from there, I created this PDF for you, creating comics with AI. One thing to note is that if you have a long story, meaning for example you want your comic to span over 50 pages, then it might make sense to separate that entire comic into 10 parts and for each part doing the specific tasks, because this free ChatGPT 3.5 model that you're going to be using is sometimes struggling with being given too much information. Here this first part is a brief overview into what usually happens in a story that is captivating and is going to hook people to continue watching because they want to see the hero's journey of that character and see where he goes. You can read through it on your own time. You can pause the video. I will share this PDF with you. Now, due to the fact that we're going to be using this ChatGPT 3.5 model, we're going to be priming it. Priming simply means teaching it from the ground up how to do a specific skill and the intended result that you're gonna get from ChatGPT. Now, since we're first of all on the story aspect, what you're gonna be doing later on is taking this entire part here, and you can read through it again on your own time, and it's just teaching about the story, how to hold attention, what characters might look like, and you're gonna paste all of this into the ChatGPT, and then here at the bottom you're gonna give your basic explanation of your specific criteria for your story, giving the general overview also of the characters and the hero's journey outline or the moral of the story. This is what you will be inputting at the bottom here. Now that you have the story, it's time to create the comic itself. With this prompt, you're basically gonna tell it to break down the story into X amount of pages, each containing X amount of panels. By panel just meaning one image with text over it, speech bubbles, or an interaction. If you didn't create your story up top, but you're for example taking a story from the internet or wherever you found it, you can just change this prompt as shown here. So you can basically skip step one of teaching it how to create a story. It is now time to create image prompts for Midjourney. Again, we're telling it what kind of skill it needs to possess in order to give you a good feedback. You paste it until here, you press enter, and once it replies, you can now tell it to create the image prompts from that specific story. Here are the resources. So now it's time to show you how to set up ChatGPT. Just enter in some browser ChatGPT. And then when looking at pricing, you can obviously use a paid model, which then allows for easier access, and you don't, for example, have to prime it. It would be already able to give you a pretty decent answer. In order to keep the cost down though, we're going to be going with the free model. So you can press here on Start Now. You can then sign up. Once the setup process is finished, you'll be met with some explanations, but basically we're going to stay on the ChatGPT model, which is this. And now we're ready to start. So go to the PDF and simply copy all of the text up until here. that and then input it into ChatGPT and adapt your final lines right here. We're gonna go with the setting of the story, which for example is young adult in third world country looking to make it big in Hollywood. Characters, we're gonna put in Idris, 17 years old, has dream of becoming a movie star, originates from South Africa, but has been able to move to Los Angeles 1 month ago and is looking to get started. Also, we're gonna put in another character. Let's call her Jeannie. She is 49 years old and is a semi-successful theater producer. I'm gonna put in female and male so that ChatGPT gets nothing confused. And Jeannie is taking a liking into Idris and wants to help him get famous, is willing to take him under his wing. Now in this story, we're not gonna have a moral of the story, but rather a hero's journey, and Idris having some talent, but being rather amateur. Specific parts of acting, has a long way to go and has to overcome many obstacles, but with the help of Jeannie, he's able to succeed. But I think that's it, and let's press enter. Based on the input I gave it, a relatively concise story. Since this is just an example, we'll continue with it along the other steps. Next up, we have the comic prompt, and we want it to create the comic panels. Let's paste that in here and let's see what we get as a result. Now, since I didn't specify in my prompt here the amount of pages and panels, it took a random amount, but let's see what we got. About 4 panels per page, which we can work with, so that's fine. And now on to the final part, creating the image prompts for Midjourney using ChatGPT. So again, let's prime it, copy all of the text that we need. And you see how quickly it is able to take up that data. And here we take that prompt and we'll input use the story panels from above. Alright, the results are in, and we got for each panel a prompt about the characters, what they're doing, what they're looking like, as well as the scenery, which is perfect. So there you have it. This is how you're going to be able to use ChatGPT to create initially the story, then the breakdown into comic panels, and then finally getting the prompts for Midjourney. Also, very quick disclaimer at the end: in order to make a single break line inside of this text box, simply press Shift and then Enter, because if you press Enter, then it starts generating. Before we get on to creating the actual images for your comic, we also have to be aware of our alignment of the comic. Step number 1 is going to canva.com, which is the tool that we're gonna use to set everything up. Once you've created your account inside of Canva, go to Create a Design, go for Document A4 Portrait. To get inspiration of what kind of layout for the comic you're gonna have, simply search comic template layout. Go to images. I kind of like this arrangement. Simply download it and then you can save the image as. Alternatively, you can screenshot it. Now the next thing to do is going to Uploads, pressing Upload Files and selecting that layout. Simply press on it and adjust its size to the page. Going from here, you can decide if you only want one portion of that. We could drag this up and then duplicate it like this, and there's your quick way of getting a template on one page. One more thing you can do, if you want to shift these things around in a row, you press on one, hold Shift, press on the next, and then this group button appears, and then you have one big group where you pull everything around at the same time. When you're happy with the layout that you've created, you will know what kind of image size you need, and later on you can adapt the images according to your initial layout. Also, one more final tip: If I select one and I move it around, you see these lines, it always snaps to those. If it's disturbing you and you want to move it around freely, simply hold on Mac Command, or on Windows it would be Control. Alright, let's get on to creating the images and we'll get back to Canva in a minute. Once you have your story all figured out and are ready to create your perfect AI images, it is now time to set up Midjourney inside of Discord. So this assumes you've already set up Discord on your Mac or PC and created an account. Step number 1, go on your left side here and click on Add a Server, then create my own for me and my friends and name it whatever you want. I'll just go for comic creation. Next up, it is time to use the links that I've provided inside of the PDF. Alternatively, you can just Google Midjourney in this case. I'll just paste the link, go for accept invite, and then back here you can see that now I have the Midjourney bot, gotten a DM from him. I need to accept terms of service and I can skip the tutorial. You now go on the left side where the Midjourney server has appeared, press on it, and sometimes this members list on the right is hidden, which you can just toggle on with the show member list button at the top. And now press on Midjourney bot here, press add app, add to server, select the server that you want it to go to. So for my case, comic creation. Leave all of this accepted, authorize, and now verify that you are human. Might have to do a captcha like me. And now inside of the comic creation server, we have the Midjourney bot. Now next up is the InsightFace Swap. Either take the link from the PDF that I've shared with you or simply Google InsightFace Swap. I'm going to use the link in my case. Again, my server is already pre-selected. Press continue, authorize. And that should be good. And now here on the right side, you can see the InsightFace Swap as well. That's the first part of setting everything up. In order for you to start creating images with Midjourney, you first of all have to get a subscription. So to do that, simply Google Midjourney, go to midjourney.com, and on the bottom right, click Login, continue with Discord, authorize. And to get your subscription, click on your name down here, manage subscription. We recommend you to get on monthly billing the standard plan, which is $30 per month. Let me show you the basics of Midjourney. You always start with /imagine. Press enter here and then you input your prompt. Let's say, for example, I want to have a crusader standing in front of ancient Jerusalem in a comic style. And you wait for it to generate. Alright, and here are the results. You will always get a panel of 4 results, and below are the buttons for upscaling and a variation of that specific image. So going from left to right, this is upscale 1/variation 1, upscale 2, variation 2, 3 and 4. And you can always also regenerate the response itself. In order to download an image, you always have to select one of those. Let's say we were happy with number 2, so we press on upscale 2. Once you have the image upscaled, you now have a couple of options down here. You can upscale it subtly, keeping the image as close to as possible as it is right here, but with higher image quality, or upscale it creatively, which might then change a few details here and there, but at the same time upscaling it to a high resolution. Next up is variation subtle, which might change a few things here or there, and then very strong, which might, for example, result in a different sky formation. Let me show you examples of those two variants right here. Press on very subtle, submit, and very strong, submit. While that is loading, we also have the vary region. I'm happy with the general image itself, but for example, I don't like that the sun is right here and I would prefer it to shine from up here. What you do is now you have 2 selection items. You can either select with a box, like this, with a rectangle, and then adapt the things that you want changed in the text box down here inside of that pattern. So for example, let's say sunny sky comic style. And the other option that you have, in order to remove the selection box, you can press up here, and then you have the rope tool, which when you press and hold, let's say I want a different character, I press here and I move around him, and that's how I keep holding. And then When I'm back at my initial starting point, I let go, and now this mask is selected. So this gives you a bit more freedom to select specific areas. And here I could write Crusader looking towards camera comic style. And then you could press enter and see the results dependent on that. Now looking back at our very strong and very subtle results, you see here there's a bit of change, different character right here, and in the strong result the character moves more over, and in general there's more differences. Now in this case the lighting is not that great, so I won't take any of those, but let's take for example here, I really like number 3, so I'll press scale 3 on that. One more thing that you have at your disposal is the zoom variation and the stretch functions. Basically zoom out would create an image that is more zoomed out by a 2x, so giving you more space loading up around here. Or if you want more of the image on the left and on the right side, for example, you first would use this left button and then on that image result use this right button. One more thing that you can change is the aspect ratio. So you see right now the results I'm getting are 1:1 aspect ratio, so they're the same length and giving me a square as a result. If I want instead an image that fits mobile devices, I would go to very subtle to keep the general image and add at the end here --AR and then 9:16. So AR stands for aspect ratio. So let's submit that and let's see the results that we're getting. Alright, results are in. Quite a few things have changed, but you can always take certain pictures and go with whatever you like the most. I think I like 4 the most, so I'll take that. Here we have aspect ratio 9:16, which is the typical mobile device standard. It is the opposite for long form content on YouTube, which also is the regular movie aspect ratio, which would be again going to very subtle and inputting instead of AR 9:16, 16:9 and submit. And judging from the results, you can see it is that one at aspect ratio, and I quite like 3, so I'll take that. And in order to get the final result with high image quality, you press on upscale subtle. Alright, the upscale is done. Now you press on the image, press open in browser, and here you have the full image, and then you press save image as and save it. That's it for the basics. Let's now move on to creating specific images. For this video I've created a comic based on a story from the book Millionaire Fastlane, and the baseline of the story is that a pharaoh tasks his 2 young nephews with each building a pyramid by themselves, with then as a result getting lifelong riches. And there are 2 ways of achieving that. One of the ways that is chosen is by purely brute forcing it with physical training and just going at it right away, and the other one is creating a system and leveraging that to expedite the process and finish it a lot quicker. So with ChatGPT I've gotten these specific panel prompts, and now I'll show you how I've worked around the results that I've gotten. So as you can see here, the first prompt that I've used is drawn comic frame of an old wise pharaoh in focus talking to his 2 young nephews Azur and Chuma. And as you can see, the result is not what I wished for. Depending on the prompt that you input, you get the output from Midjourney. So what I did was I made use of incorporating a bit more clarity. So side view and the pharaoh doing hand gestures. So you will always have to play around with the prompts that you've gotten from ChatGPT. So then I decided to only have the pharaoh generate, and I found one result that wasn't half bad. So I used that, and you always keep building until you find something that you're happy with. So here this looked a bit more imposing than the last one. Then I used the zoom out 2x function, going from this image to now any of these 4 possibilities. And you can see you can always select different details. Sometimes something might not add up. For example, here he doesn't really have any feet anymore, or something in the background looks off. So you always have to adjust based on that. Once I had the image with the pharaoh that I was happy with, I then focused on the 2 other main characters and tried to get them standing with their backs facing the camera. As you can see here inside of my prompt, I've started using the blending method. And the blending method simply means that you take the link of a previous image and use that as a basis to reproduce your results. In order to get that, you click on that image, right click and press copy image address. Then as always press /imagine, input that link, and then take your prompt again right here. Don't worry about this S750. This is stylized from Midjourney itself, and it's always in there in the back, so you don't have to input that as well. Now you would press enter to get the results that I've gotten here based on this specific image. And you can make it really intricate. If you want somebody doing a specific pose, you'd search some image, for example, man pushing rock. Let's just use this. We save the image first of all, and then we go back into Discord. What I would advise you to do is also create a separate channel for those images that you're now gonna upload. Call it assets. You can double click on the plus instead of having to click and then upload a file. Just double click on it, upload an image, press enter. Then you would go into your original channel and replace that image link with the one you just got. Paste, and now it would use the image generation based on the pose from that guy. And with that, you're able to input multiple images as well. So for example, one would be the background, one would be the characters that are in there, and the other one would be the pose, and just play around with it. Here, let's see how I got the result. So I have the background here, I have my original image from the pharaoh, and I have my two guys fixing the camera with their back. And the end result is, as you can see, what I wanted, and then I have to play around with what I get. So I choose whichever and then see what fits. The next panel that I had was streets filled with a crowd. So I took this initial image that I generated earlier of the marketplace, but for me there wasn't enough going on there. So I input it into Midjourney with this prompt of streets filled with a crowd of Egyptian people and merchants and animals. And this is the result that I got, which I ended up using. Now once I was happy with how the initial image with the pharaoh and his two nephews looked, I then screenshotted each of those nephews, uploaded them back into Discord, and then based on the specific image gave it a prompt of that character looking into the camera with the full body visible and wearing that specific Egyptian attire that I want. Here he was at a bit of an angle, so I pressed very strong and we went further. Once I had a face I was happy with, I zoomed out and then I kept extending the bottom. There was the final result. Then I moved on to the next character with the same process as before. Here I had my image. Now to show you a simple trick how to remove the background inside of Canva with the caveat that you have to have a paid subscription. You open your document, select that image, edit image here, BG remover, and sometimes it messes up. So what you do is press on it again and you zoom in and you do the work manually of erasing and removing, increasing the brush size or decreasing it. Alright, that's good enough for this. Exit out of it and the changes are saved. You can export that specific file. You can only export PNGs, so the background being transparent while having the Pro Canva subscription. So you press here on share, download, select that specific page. So we're on page 2. We only want page 2. Done, and press transparent background and make sure that it's PNG selected because JPEG would put a white background back there. That's good. And then download. As you can see here now, there is no more background on there, and you can use that to either continue working inside of Midjourney or using it inside of Canva. For example, putting a background behind it. Just as a quick example, good shortcut to also remember in Canva is option 1. And then you have the arrangement, anything above would be on top. So now this guy is on top, and pull him smaller and put him somewhere there. Now next up, I wanted an image where the guy was dragging a heavy stone with some people in the background. What I did was, again, the blending method of taking that guy and then inputting my specific requirements. But as you can see, the results, the guy is not really dragging any stones because it's unclear of what it's really supposed to do. So what you do instead is blending with multiple pictures. So I went online and looked for a guy dragging a stone and I uploaded that into my other channel. As always, pressed on it, right click to copy the address, and then also had my guy here and dumped down the prompt itself to just drawn comic style of Egyptian man lifting a stone. And the results, if not perfect, were still quite a bit better compared to before. So now the guy was actually carrying a stone. As another example, a Egyptian workshop of one guy working and the other basically visiting him and asking questions. Starting from scratch with the workshop, I wasn't happy with that since this didn't really look that prompt ancient Egyptian. So I changed the prompt a bit to primitive old Egyptian workshop with various wood tools and materials scattered around, desert in the background, partially shaded area. As you can see, a few words can make a big impact on the image result you get. Then I worked with what I had here, and once happy, I took my guy that I initially isolated from before, as well as that image from just a second ago, and put it together into drawn comic style of crafty Egyptian man in simple clothing working on a strange twisted apparatus inside primitive old Egyptian workshop. Now, working on a strange twisted apparatus wasn't really an end result that would happen because it was too specific, and Midjourney again didn't know what to put in his hands. So you basically have to work in stages. So I went from the empty workshop to now the guy in his workshop, played around with different workshops, and then took the second guy from this image where he is standing alone, and now I have two guys in here. Obviously there are some imperfections, but you can always work on them with those tools like this vary region, and then you can select somebody if there was somebody in the background or whatever. In this case I took number one and then worked on it with variations. Then I ended up with this result. This guy was in the back, so I removed him using that tool I just showed you again. Then I changed this character here with again my guy. You can see the results were quite a bit closer. It might not be perfect, but it's definitely getting you quite a bit closer to the end result that you wish for. Then I went to changing the second one, and sometimes it happens that here this guy was just gone completely, so you have to play around with it as mentioned. What I did instead of selecting the entire guy on the right side was I just took the face shot and changed the face of the guy. I had my final shot right here, which I then later zoomed out. Alright, so now it's time to show you how to use the InsightFace Swap. I've created some images and now I want to move these faces onto each of these pictures. So we begin by the command save ID. Let's begin with the woman. Call her Jane. Upload the image. Press enter. Now she has been saved. What we do now is right click that image, go to apps, in swapper. This was the original and this is with the new face saved. Then what we do is we save ID the male now, call him Tom. Save ID has been saved, so apps, in swapper, and then it's automatically taking the previously used save ID. Original and face changed. Works wonderfully. So besides using the save ID and then right clicking on an uploaded image and using the in swapper, the other alternative you have is if you've already saved multiple save IDs, so multiple faces that you want to put on, you can simply input the command swap ID, which now here you use this previously set face and then go to image, upload your target image, then press enter. That was the original. And that is the result of using the previously uploaded face. Also, one more thing to note, you have every day using the free version from the InsightFace Swap 50 credits, so make sure to be within the limit. Let's say you've created all the images that you want. Now it's time to make them all look similar, because what might happen is that the art style sometimes looks a bit different. For that I'm using Picsart. It's a free to use tool, you don't have to create an account or anything. I've provided the link inside of the PDF for you, and what you do is you press customize on the bottom left, select any of those images, give it a bit of time to load. And now the image is selected. What you do now is press on effects up here. Then you can play around with these specific effects. Whatever they might change, this made it a bit more wide focused. What I used for mine were under artistic, the Fatal 2, which changes the coloring by quite a bit. Now in order to download these images, you would have to create an account. What I did instead, just simply screenshot them. So I go in there and I screenshot, leave 1 or 2 pixels inside of the image in order not to get any white space. Right here I've got my image with good enough pixel quality. I could technically still upscale it later, but I don't really need it. It's good enough for a comic with that filter on top. And now what I do is going to uploads and selecting the next one. Select the image, effects, artistic and Fatal 2. Give it a bit of time to load. Press somewhere else so that it's no longer selected with these bars around, and then again zoom it in a bit so that it's as big as possible, and then screenshot yet again. And that's number 2 done. And this is what you will do for the rest of them. And I would advise you to go through whichever effects there are for free and just try it around. Alright, so now that all of our images have the same filter on top, it is now time to arrange those images inside of the comic and then put on the speech bubbles and the narration. Let's go for the uploads and let's just handpick a few. In order to fill out those properly, I'm now gonna have to drag them each, basically zooming them in. Alright, and the last one. So let's look at the borders. You see some white everywhere. Also at the bottom is not perfect. We can see if we can adapt it. Right here again, hold Command on Mac or on Windows should be Control. And just drag it freely to remove any white space around the picture. There is some white space on this side. Alright, same for here, snapping. Without holding Command it makes it too big in my liking, so holding Command, putting it perfectly there. And repeat that for every image that you've put in. Now what you could also do is putting a border here, but that would take away real estate of the image, as you can see, which is not that great, which is why I try to use the border of the template. Let's put these in as well. Now it's time to adjust them inside of that frame. To do that, you can either press Edit Image and then go to Crop, and here you can see where it's above and below, and you can adjust it accordingly so that there would be enough space for speech bubbles, for example. Plus narration, you also have to account for that. You can also just double click it and then it'll immediately go to that. So that's part number 1. Next up are speech and narration bubbles. For that, there are a few elements. Number 1 is a rectangle. You'll have one with rounded borders. And then it's now time for getting the bubbles. For that, what we're gonna do, I'll show you the example real quick. So it's basically a half moon zoomed in depending on the space, and usually for speech bubbles the text bubble itself has a black border, and if I were to put this half moon behind it, then there would be a black bar going across as well. And what you do is you put a white item in front of it. I'll show you that right now. Let's put white color right here. Let's put a black border which doesn't take too much space. That's okay. Then let's make it more round. We can put it to full. And then next item is a half moon. Here we go. We change the color of it, make it white. Putting a border here would, since it's an image, not be the solution that we want. Instead you go to Edit Image, to Shadows, and then Outline. And here is the proper one we want. 10 is okay. And now you crop it, basically make it a half moon. And now you can play around with it. As I mentioned previously, the shortcut Option 1 on Mac, and then to get the layer arrangement, put it above that, make it less like that, and then let's go for a circle and make it a white color. Decrease the size. That should be good. This border is still also a bit too much. Let's put it to 2. It's better. So now what you do is also go here to text, add a text box, move it here, and then put in whatever text you want. You can change whatever fits your style. What I like to use is here the Comic Sans. You can always adapt the size, obviously, of the bubble according to your text. Pull it in. This next. It's a bit too big. Make it smaller. Then zoom in and adapt this circle. Next, what I would advise you to do is select everything. So begin with the first item, hold Shift, select the next, then the text, and then this. When you let go of Shift, you have this group option. Now when you move it around, it goes around together. So that's how you create a speech bubble. Next up, we have a thought bubble, which is with this cloud. This one should work. If we can crop that out. Like that. You adjust the size obviously and put in a circle. Make it smaller. Again, edit image, shadows, outline, bit more size. Now decrease the size. We can also again add a text box. And that's where you have your thought bubble. Now the final one, the narration panels. Let's get this element. Let's give it some yellow background. Here we can give it a regular border. And then we go for another text. Let's group it. Now we can move it up. Now we can copy paste it. Since these panels are now all the same size, this should fit perfectly like that. So you have your narration text and then putting the speech bubbles in and your 4 bubbles. Now if you want to adjust something, first of all copy it and then ungroup that. For example, you want somebody speaking down there, so we turn it in a way that makes sense, like that, and then move this over here, make it taller like that in order to fit a bit more text in. Now we adapt this here again. Sometimes it's also easier to just copy paste a second item, again making sure that it's pressing Option Q1 below the text. So let's drag that below this text, so we can select everything again and group it. Obviously I have to adjust some things again since I made it smaller. This now is looking better like that. Getting closer to the end now. You've went through and taken care of all of your actual content of the comic. Now it's time to take care of the cover. You can just type comic cover template and just look for some inspiration. Usually they have this ISBN code, they have the main text there with the characters, also very often some subtitle lines, and there's a general style to it. You don't have to 100% follow it, but you can, you know, get some inspiration from it. I created first of all my big headline, which you have to check which fits best your theme. Right? My comic is taking place in ancient Egypt, so I was looking for something fitting the theme. What you can do in order to get this kind of headline, if you're interested, with this rotation in here. First of all, there's a grouping of 2 headlines, right? So the first line and then number 2. And the way that number 2 is taken care of is when you go to effects, then down here you have the curve. Next up, I took a title bar in all black. Here a small subtitle talking about finding us on our YouTube or scanning the QR code. Here's the YouTube channel along with the logo. And we have the QR code. Just Google QR code 3, enter your URL, paste it in here. You can change colors and whatever, and when you're happy with that, just screenshot it and add it into your cover. I put it here at the bottom right. Also adding on top, I've put in a subheadline. Here it's to create a bit more engagement containing the secret to success, because there's a moral inside of that story which is supposed to teach you something. Also, one more side note, the way I was able to get my logo, which is usually only a square, into a circle is by using a frame, and you can use this as a free Canva user as well. So just enter frame here and you can see all the frames. For example, select that and then here again my GT Duo logo and simply drag and drop it inside of there. And continuing on, using Midjourney and a nice prompt, I generated something that looks quite flashy with those 2 pyramids in the background and then my 2 main characters each doing their respective ability that they're known for. So the one guy doing the physicality aspect and the other one working on something, on a system or a tool, for example. Also, if you're stitching something together like this, make sure, because this would be the normal images, right? So I basically exported the background along with these 2 guys and then went back to this Picsart that I initially showed you to get the specific filter, put that filter on top, and this is the end result of it.